Joseph Duarte covers the University of Houston athletics in many different ways, and the Cougars, Kelvin Sampson and company, this thought that, what's going to happen, Sasser, et cetera. Well, they blew off the doors to get themselves into the Sweet 16 after a heck of a performance over the weekend, and Joseph joins us now on 365 Sports. Did everyone, if there were a few nervous Nellies, kind of settle down after how they played this weekend?
Probably after halftime of that Auburn game. You're down 10 and your two-star guards are dealing with injuries, and you're not quite sure what the next 20 minutes are going to hold. But if you didn't get it together, you were going home. But if there were any doubt, I think that last 20 minutes, especially on the defensive end, what they did, good grief, four field goals by Auburn, and it was dominating. So I think with a week here or a little bit less to rest and recover, Houston's got to be feeling pretty good right now going into the second weekend of the tournament.
Was Sasser's injury maybe made worse by the fact that he left that game and then Northern Kentucky made the run that they did and they just kind of rolled the dice, or is it still something they're going to be concerned about here in the coming weeks?
Well, it didn't get any worse in terms of him hurting it. He felt a little, twinge, and it's kind of one of those, hey, let's be careful. It just maybe felt funny, and let's take that time off, and that's what they did. And of course, you start to wonder when Northern Kentucky made that run, and then they kept it pretty close, second guessing, all that kind of stuff. But they felt good about the injury after that game, and then in the days between the first and second round, he went through treatment, and he actually told us, look, there's going to be pain, it's going to linger, probably not going to go away the rest of the tournament, but it's manageable, and there's no damage, there's no structural tear or anything like that, and it's just gonna be managing it from this point on. But certainly having him play as much as he did in the second round, and really it wasn't the growing injury that kept him out. It was the 4 fouls in the Auburn game, but they needed somebody to step up out of their guards, and that happened to be Tremont March. They're calling him T March now instead of T Mark, so he lived up to his March nickname when they needed it most.
Got to be some NIL there somewhere. T March, get a little NIL going. No, but Kelvin Sampson, doing a tremendous job as always, and always up for National Coach of the Year once again. Just kind of how would you summarize and describe the efforts he's put in and the way he's handled this particular roster and gotten them where they are, despite, here and over the course of the season, but here recently some issues with health and just other things to overcome?
Well, you look at last year, and he didn't have Mark or Sasser, and he gets them to the Elite Eight, and you wonder what can he do to top that. And I was in the media show going to the game the other day, and I kept hearing a lot of people talk about, well, this could be the next number one that gets sent home. And I'm thinking to myself, there's one thing you can count on about Kelvin Sampson. He's not going to have 2 bad games in a row. That just doesn't happen. So I felt going in, even with everything that they had going on, that they were going to find somehow, some way to win that game and get back to another Sweet 16. And that's the Kelvin factor. I mean, he will game plan you to death. He will somehow, put together a plan defensively that just takes teams out. And it's amazing. I mean, this guy, I remember when he got here in 2014 and how bad things were here. And by the next year, they're in the NIT and then another NIT, and then they go on this current run of NCAA tournament appearances. But, this has to be up there. They were a high preseason pick, and they've maintained that all year. They've been number one. Now they're a number 1 seed. He's just taking them to new heights, and they're 1 weekend away from the ultimate, and that's playing in a Final Four in their hometown. And I think the way that the tournament's gone with 2 number 1s out, this is anybody's tournament. It's anybody can win it, and I think you have to put them in Alabama at the head of the class right now for for the two teams that could end up in the championship game.
There was a tweet from Sean Farnham about, of the remaining Sweet 16 teams, what are their records against anyone else who's a Sweet 16 team? And there's like 4 schools that have not played anybody. And we know about Houston and Quad 1 and all that. But they did play Alabama straight up. That's the only common denominator among anybody else in the Sweet 16 in Houston. But they played them straight up. So it's even their conference sometimes doesn't allow them to have, like you see perhaps in the SEC or the Big 12. But there's no doubt that when Houston gets inside the Big 12, they expect this same kind of success, don't they?
They do, and I think that's part of what they've done in the past. They know that the American is not going to give them a lot of opportunities to get those meaningful late season games, those Quad 1 games. So Kelvin's loaded it up in recent years. They've had home and homes with Alabama. They've had home and homes with Virginia. They've gone to Oregon. They've played Arkansas. They've gone down the list, and they've tried to add some. They even tried to get North Carolina up recently before all the coaching changes that they've had. So they're battle tested. I mean, and then I guess the best game in the conference would be Memphis, the 2 times that you play them. But that's what it's all designed for is this time of year. And that Alabama game that they had on December 10th, Houston was up 15 in the second half and ended up losing. So, they've shown that they can hang with Alabama. I got to watch them, and they were in the other part of that regional in Birmingham this weekend, and they look really good. And if they get Brandon Miller healthy and some of the other guys, the way they were hitting the threes, especially in that first game, that could be a really interesting championship game. But you'd have to think that Houston playing with the home crowd, that they will be the favorites. But they certainly have played a tough schedule to this point to get them ready for the Sweet 16 and beyond.
Well, Joseph, of all the parts of the bracket, Houston, after the first weekend, it went as chalk as it can go, save for a 5 beating a 4, which is, pretty much chalk anyway. There's not much of a dividing line between that. It's 1, 2, 3, 5 left in their region. So they've got the toughest road to go.
Yeah, that one, the Midwest stayed pretty much the form. You look at some of the other ones that have a Florida Atlantic or a Princeton. I think the other big matchup will be possibly UCLA and Gonzaga in the West. But even then, you have UConn and Arkansas, so that could go any number of ways. But that it's been a tournament. Once you saw Purdue go down, and then the big one with Kansas falling, you knew that this was going to be one of those years that you get maybe two number ones to Houston at this point. Maybe you get one. Nothing is out of bounds right now, but I think that's what makes this fun and exciting. And you should just see the when they were showing the scores during the games in Birmingham, just the reaction of people, because if you filled out a bracket, we're all done. We're all toast at this point. But that's what makes this fun. And that's what, gives the underdog and the Cinderella an opportunity to win it.
Joseph, what are your early thoughts on Miami coming up on Friday?
That's going to be it's kind of a contrast in styles. They like to move the ball. They like to do stuff in transition. Houston a little bit better, or likes to slow it down in the half court. I think that'll be interesting. Miami had a really good offensive rebounding game last night against Indiana. That's one of Houston's strengths. And then you look at the guards that roll out. They've got the ACC Player of the Year and Isaiah Wong. Houston matches up with Marcus Sasser. They've got Nigel Pack. At one of the other guards, Houston has Jamal Shedd. So I think it's a really fascinating Sweet 16. I think Houston pulls this one out, and you know what that's going to lead up to? The talk of, are we going to see a Texas versus Houston Elite Eight? And boy, that would be a crazy atmosphere with one of those teams. One of those teams. We didn't get Texas and Texas A&M in the second round, so we should probably get Houston and Texas. in the Elite Eight for a spot in the Final Four.
Well, that'll just get everyone ready for next football season, right? For the game that's going to be in Houston.
Yeah, it'll be in Houston in October. So why not get a jump on it? Houston's wanted to play the Longhorns for as long as I can remember, and you got them on the football schedule at least once next year, and you got them in basketball 2 times. So why not get this party started a little early?
Joseph, the spring drill started, I believe, for Dana Holgorsen and company back at the end of February.
Right.
Just have you had a chance to kind of sneak around, get a little feel for how things are going almost a month later?
I haven't, just because I've been on the road with the conference tournament. But I can tell you, this is an important one for them, and there's several things that they have to look at, namely. Everybody thinks that Donovan Smith will be the quarterback. He's the transfer from Texas Tech. So that's something that they're going through. And really the other big storyline is Alton McCaskill and how is his health. He's not doing much of anything in the spring. They want to get him ready for the season. But having him back in the backfield after the freshman year that he had will be huge for them. And then, it's replacing Tank Dell at receiver. But, they've had some guys hit the transfer portal from the offensive line that they didn't expect. So that's another issue that, that they've sort of had been confronted with in the spring. But, the next couple of weeks, it's weird. It overlaps so much with what basketball is doing right now that about 3 days after the championship game is when Houston will have its football spring game. So there's not a lot of chances to get over there. But just from what I've been hearing and talking with people, they haven't had any major setbacks, anything like that. So it's been a pretty good spring altogether. Dana Holgorsen, of course, making some headlines with his interview with The Athletic, discussing his hot seat or lack of it. So that's probably been the biggest news to come out of Houston football this spring.
I had the ain't no bleeping hot seat all queued up, ready to go, but you mentioned it there. So yeah, that was interesting comments, and that was Dana Holgorsen right there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much, there's no filter with Dana. And, we talked to some people during the season, and there was some talk of what Houston could do if things didn't get better. And, we've been told that he would get at least 1 year in the Big 12. So I'm not sure who Dana's talking to versus who we're talking to. But at some point, if they do struggle in their first year in the Big 12, I think there will be some pressure, and there'll be some calls to make a change. But certainly going into the Big 12, knowing the experience he has there and the history, they felt like he was the guy to take him into that first year. But depending on how things go, and it's a tough stretch for Houston in their first year with the teams that they have lined up. So, I don't know what it'll take, if it'll be a 6-6. They fire coaches here for 8-4, according to the school president from a few years ago. If it's not hot, it's warm, and I'd rather it be cold if I'm him versus warm or hot.
How much does the clout come from when it comes to Fertitta? When it comes to things like this, if he gets bothered or he gets annoyed, how much of that is an influence?
Well, these are his hires. Dana Holgorsen, was his hire. It was sort of his hand-picked guy, and he's had a couple of these now. And I think for a guy like Tillman Fertitta, who's as successful as he is and has his hands in many things, not just the business ventures, but with the Rockets ownership, it doesn't look good if his hand-picked guy doesn't perform or doesn't fare well. I'm not sure if at the end of the day, how quickly he will be to write that check. I've been told that, the buyout isn't as big of an issue as people would make it out, to where somebody like Fertitta would, if necessary, write it. But I think the hope is that they can right this ship and have a good year, so that they're not having to, because this is where Houston gets into problems. So when they start changing coaches as much as they have, and it's been a revolving door for many reasons, coaches leaving or just not working out. but I think this would certainly be one that wouldn't look as well in terms of Tillman Fertitta and his involvement at the school if it doesn't work out, because this was his guy.
Hey, Joseph, great stuff. Enjoy the opportunity with this tournament. I know you do. And then eventually we'll have you on, hopefully again sometime towards the end of the spring to summarize what they've done with Coach Holgorsen. Good luck the rest of the way with the Cougars and Kelvin Sampson. Mack Rhodes is the one who hired him, and I know he's always spoken very highly of Kelvin Sampson during that process. Thanks for your time. Joseph Duarte, the University of Houston, covers them for the Houston Chronicle. All right.